Hey legends, today I want to walk you through some advanced cursor strategies on how to make the most out of cursor development workflows. So we're going to start off with the .cursor rules folder. These are specific files which cursor will essentially pull into the context, so into the chat, upon different occasions. Let's first look at this file, code standards MDC. So I've set up this file. No, actually, Cursor helped me set it up, and it is always going to trigger. So this file is always going to be in the Cursor context. This is where you want to put some of the most important things of how you want Cursor to operate. This is going to be specific kind of workflows or rules that you want Cursor to follow. Maybe you want it to document its progress. Maybe you want it to touch upon to-do, MD files, stuff like this. So this is basically what Cursor is going to know each time you interact with it. Okay, this is powerful in itself, but things get a little more interesting when we have a rule type which is auto-attached. So let's say you have Cursor working on a big project, and maybe you have some CSS files or SAS files in there. Maybe you have some TypeScript, whatever it is. Whenever Cursor starts working on that specific type of file, that's when these auto-attach rules get pulled in. So this is TypeScript specific rules. They're automatically pulled into the context when Cursor starts interacting with TypeScript. So that is really going to give Cursor specific rules for working with specific things in your workflow, if that makes sense. Sorry, I kind of looped it there, but that's basically what this is all about. Then we have these agent requested files. So let's say Cursor is kind of talking to itself and working through a workflow, and it says, okay, I'm going to review security. It's going to essentially pull in or try to pull in these rules at that point. So this is kind of based on Cursor's back and forth flow with itself. It's going to ask, I have these files, maybe I can access. Should I check some of these rules? If it makes sense, it will pull it in and use it. These sort of things are not guaranteed, but it's helpful to have these sort of files for security checks, for what are they called? Let's say it has to kind of troubleshoot at the end. You want it to check its work. You have specific ways it can check. For example, it can interact with your WordPress environment via some API calls, for example, to check orders or whatever it is. These are going to be brought in at the time. Okay. And then we have what was the last one I wanted to touch upon? These API documentation MDC. So these are manual rules. To bring these in, you have to request them from Cursor. So where are my rules? Rules, there we go. It's a special thing, add new rule. Why didn't it reference them? API documentation. Okay, there we go. I've referenced the rule, and it's going to bring it in, and it's going to treat it like a rule. So this is going to be very important for the agent, and it's going to follow these rules whenever you reference them. So why did I want to start with rules? So why did I want to start with these rules? Well, because when you have a complex file and you're working on lots of different file types and you're working on really big projects, you always need to kind of suggest to Cursor where things are, for example, what sort of procedures it should follow, what sort of strategies it should take for certain development workflows. And that's going to result in consistency across your full project. Because if you're working with larger projects, or as the project grows, even if you're just starting out, without having these rules in place, your project is going to essentially get into like a spaghetti type of situation, and there's going to be a lot of issues with the code, with lots of, what's the best way to describe it? Differences. There's going to be lots of differences throughout the code base, and these differences are going to add up, and it's going to get really complicated. However, if you're following standard rules or standard operating procedures throughout the Cursor agentic workflow, then your project is going to have a much more consistent end result.